There we go. So what's the weather like today in Texas, Mac?
Hot, hot, and hot.
Really? How hot has it
Maybe
been getting?
hotter. Yesterday we had it reach almost to 107, and then the
Gosh.
lows have only been probably between about 85 to 90 degrees. There's no in between here. You either get really hot or you get really cold. And when it's really cold, it's not even like the snow, it's just the black ice and the ice and everyone's just like being
You
closed
know,
in.
I'm talking to you from Connecticut, and we don't think of Texas as a place that gets ice and real cold, but you do.
Yeah, we get at least like a dry cold. Um it's not really wet. It's just it just gets really cold. If it rains, then basically because it gets really cold, the the ice on the roads and everything, because it gets so cold, it just turns it turns into that black ice. So that's what we get. We don't get like ice like on the grass or like in our backyards or front yards. No,
Just on the roads.
so just on the roads.
Great. Yeah, that's perfect. I wanted to start. Well, first of all, welcome to Transqat. It's great to have this conversation with you. I wanted to start with MMA because I am incredibly ignorant about it. So, for those of my listeners who are just as ignorant as I am, tell me what MMA is like and what it involves.
It's basically, I mean, in the name, mixed martial arts. It's just basically the biggest art form that you can combine any art form. It has very few rules to where, if say for instance, if somebody's on the ground, you can't like, knee them, in the face, because then like, they do have rules to where, it is protecting the other athletes, but ultimately you're just trying to, wait, can I cuss on here?
Please. Yeah.
You can
Fuck
beat the ever
yes.
living. You can, you can beat the ever living shit out of the other person for the money back.
Okay. All right. Um, so you are not only do you have to have all of these different skills that, say, a boxer or a wrestler would have, but you also need to have an awareness of different fighting styles,
to
different.
be I think to be a good MMA athlete is to be all rounded, and I think just in general, especially when you get like more to the elite level of sports, is you really do want to have stuff in the back of your pocket that most people wouldn't know how to either strategize to deflect or to defend. um like there, I think, for me personally, I think having a lot of different styles is way better than just having a few. Now you should have a few, like say for instance, like boxing or wrestling, or judo, or jujitsu is, I would say, probably the top four styles I say that are mostly prominent, to you should probably use consistently in MMA.
Because at the very least, I mean, you need to be able to use them offensively, but you also need to be able to counter what's coming at you. So you
Yeah,
need to
it's
understand
like
it
a
from a.
dance. I describe like, mixed martial arts as like being a dance, which is really interesting. One style I've been looking at is almost like a Brazilian type dance, but it's mostly um a art form of, of beating somebody up. So they use the cage in order to kind of like break dance off the wall, but they're using that momentum in order to power up their kick. In order to, if someone's coming towards them, towards the wall, they'll kind of do like a spinning backhand kick and just kind of, it almost looks like a breakdancing move, but they're using that momentum that they're using from going to the ground, posting their hand, using the wall, and then kicking their foot up and then up around them to basically land it on the other person that's coming at them.
So when you're fighting in a cage, there are, I mean, I don't, it sounds like there can be elements of parkour almost where you're.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, that's what I love about MMA is that no one ever has like an exact style to follow, and that's what I love about martial arts is that you don't have to do one thing about that one person is doing exactly how they're doing it. One thing that my coach taught me was that, if you like something that somebody is doing, but it doesn't necessarily fit towards like, your body type or what, you can kind of um tweak it a little bit in order to fit it to your style, is what we call it. It's your style.
Yeah.
Um so for it's like with wrestling, you do your style of wrestling. You don't do somebody else's. And if you do want to do somebody else's, you better make sure you do a good job of copying the move.
Right, right. Hours of practice to get there. What brought you to MMA? When did you start with that?
I haven't gotten any cards yet. I haven't like truly like gone into it yet. I just kind of been in and out of the works. I've done a lot of jujitsu. I had my first tournament last year. And then, just being like an older athlete, and especially a trans one, like seeing competition is kind of really hard because even in this economy, it's hard to just even make money for trading. So that's the main issue. I know very few people, especially trans individuals, who are in mixed martial arts or in jujitsu or wrestling that really go far in this sport, because it does require a lot of money and a lot of resources in order to kind of get you through those gates, as well as meeting the different people, the sponsors, the organizers, the athletes, the coaches, the administrators, and everything like that. But I have been working with some athletes that have been able to, and fortunate enough to be in a position to where they can kind of go a little farther. Um, but for me right now, my vision has been to try to tailor and master a lot of the mixed martial arts, so that way when I do jump in, I'm not I'm not going to be less than average. Like, I'm going to be prepared coming in, and that's my main goal. Is I want to be prepared as soon as when I get launched into this, because I know my story, and as soon as I start doing good at the elite level, that's gonna be a story to tell.
Yeah. I want to hold off on talking about the documentary for a bit, but in the very beginning of it, they show some of your training for when you were a wrestler, and it's very clear immediately that here's somebody who is pursuing the goal of being an elite athlete. This what you were doing was above and beyond what you would expect a high school student to be doing. So I'm not surprised to hear you say that being elite in this sport as well is your goal.
Yeah, our coach Clark, coach Travis Clark, he was a coach that was put in not only my life but other athletes' lives, and individuals' lives for that matter. That he has a true mission to better athletes for the greater good. I definitely do believe that his workouts, his character, how he structures the programs is absolutely phenomenal. The way that he's taken Trinity Wrestling at my high school and turned it into something that really wasn't anything, and turned it into something that now we're like the biggest hub in the HEB area, Dallas DFW area. Um, and is now the head coach of the women's national team for Team Texas. So he's done a lot of things over the years. So when I learned under him, I knew that I was working with somebody special, and I knew if I didn't take advantage of that, I wasn't going to be the best athlete that I could be. So once I went under his wing, my main goal was to just really just kill it. I think and I've done a lot of sports. I've dabbled in soccer, volleyball, baseball, softball, track, pole vaults, and all those things. But there was something about wrestling that he taught me. I knew that I could translate the things that I did in the practice room and the life skills and lessons I learned, and translate that into the classroom. And I saw the results, and I was just like, this is something that I really want to do for the rest of my life. Like, it's not only making me stronger and just being a person, but and physically, but it's making me stronger mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. All of the skills, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about with MMA, but you not only need to be able to perform in the ring, you need to have the interpersonal skills to network with these folks who might be able to sponsor you, with folks, you need to be able to talk to people as well as do the actual fighting. So, and
And I'll take it even a step further. It's even you know, you look at the UFC and these different fighting organizations, like people love a character. They love to see a good fight. So I think that with my personality and the different, I don't know, just who I am, I really think that I could go far in the sport. And it's just been honestly, personally, a struggle to find people, especially in the LGBTQ community, who wants to get behind me in this journey is
Yeah.
like honestly my main thing. Because I'm noticing a pattern, especially like within our own community, is mostly people just want to know our stories, but that's pretty much it. There's
Hmm.
no really kind of how should I put it, further aid in trying to develop what our future could be.
Yeah. How representative are trans people in MMA? You had mentioned when we first started texting back and forth, you had mentioned Fallon Fox. I was looking a little bit at who that was, and I came up with the name Alana McLaughlin.
Love her.
Yeah.
She's a hot girl. Love her.
Do you, those are both trans women, though. Are there other trans guys that you can network with within the sport?
I was able to network with a few out in Brazil, so that's where I've been finding most of the MMA athletes um, that have been mostly reaching out to me from overseas. But I haven't had an MMA trans man athlete come to me and come forward. At least like someone who is, and I'm not saying that I wouldn't work with somebody who is not in my caliber, but at this point, with how far I am into training and the skill level I do have, like, I do have sort of an expectation for other for people to meet me there, because yes, my goal is to ultimately, widen the sport, but also like for me personally, I know I need to go far in this because I know I could do something with it. I
Yeah.
know I'm good. I know I have the skill level, and I want other people to honestly realize that, because I'm not just some you know, athlete that took performance enhancing drugs, quote unquote,
Yeah.
and was tearing up like these people in my division and everything like that. And that's one thing that I honestly wanted to touch on, was that in high school, like I wasn't just only competing against women in the UIL season, like I was competing against men during the off season as well. Now, how we got around that with USA Wrestling was very interesting. So with wrestling and how I was able to even compete against men was something that we had to strategically kind of get around. And it was a really interesting process, but it is what it is now. But most people leave that out, but I feel like that is such an important, and especially when I wasn't even on any hormones whatsoever, because at the time when I was transitioning, um I did want to take my tea, because who doesn't want to further along in their process as a
Right.
transsexual. And but I ultimately thought, and the conversation of fairness, right? I do believe that there is some type of complexity to that, in a sense that I have a due diligence to myself to be fair to my competition if it's unfair to them.
Right.
And so we talked to my doctor. I was in the at Children's Hospital here in Dallas, and what was their program called? Oh my God, I can't remember what their project was called, but they ended up getting shut down because of the legislation here in Texas. So the doctor that I was under is actually in California now. But I asked her, I was like, I don't want to take tea and feel like I have an unfair advantage to these girls or these women that are competing for a scholarship because I would say wrestling and the state championships and even the national championship with USA Wrestling is probably the biggest tournaments that you will have in the state of Texas. And people don't realize that. Like
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people come from everywhere across the state of Texas, even outside the state of Texas, and coaches that come to watch these athletes compete for uh, for the state title, and it's pretty nice medal. And it's pretty nice. It's some pretty nice perks. Like you get to get televised, and if you win the state title, you get to have to do an interview. Like it's really cool. I think wrestling is something that most people take for granted, but most people don't understand it because they think it's like gay. But it is what it is. But yeah, I took T, but I told my doctor I was like, you know what, I want to make sure that my levels are in the range of a woman. So most people didn't realize this, and this is where the trauma comes in,
Yeah.
and the even I would say even the medical problems um, was that I had to suppress not only my estrogen because I felt like if I was going through puberty as a full woman, I would have, uh, but my T was as well as restricted. So for 4 years of this, inherently, I had to go through this developmental growth was stunted because I
Mm.
had to compete at the highest level that I could, but do it fairly.
And not step over that line of
Mhm.
integrity that you're talking about. Yeah.
The
And
integrity.
that's one of many things that opponents of trans athletes just like to gloss over, is that even within the levels of HRT that you're taking, it's not one size fits all, right?
Mm.
If you're performing at this elite level in Texas as a high school student, there are ways to make sure that, yeah, that competition is still fair. And
Yeah,
yeah.
and I knew I was good, so I knew that if I did take T, it definitely would have been used as a performance enhancing drug. And if somebody asked me that question today, and if that was the case, I would have to answer truthfully and be like, yeah, I mean, technically, yes, I was on performance enhancing drugs, but that was not the case
Mm,
because it ultimately was like, I knew from the very beginning, I knew that someone in the state of Texas was going to end up grabbing my story and end up doing something with it. So ultimately, not only did I do it for my safety, but I also did it because one, I wanted to prove to people that it's possible to achieve something out of the biomechanics of what it is to be a man or a woman, either physically or mentally.
let's follow that. I do have one more question about MMA, but remind me and we'll come back to it at the end.
Oh,
Um,
my cat is I don't know if you cut this out, but my cat is like being so loud. I don't know if you hear in the
no,
background.
you're fine. You're fine.
Switch sceneries.
And
She's
I
being
have
very loud
four of them,
today.
so
Yes, hi, boy. I'll just go ahead and let her. Come on, go, 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 go. Good boys. Okay, so I have like 5 animals.
I was I was surprised to hear cat, given that you were raised a dog person.
I was raised ultimately a dog person, but I am a cat and a dog person at the end of the day.
Excellent. Let's leave my remaining MMA question for a bit, and let's just fill in the gaps for folks who don't know your story. How old were you when
Hold
you
on,
came out?
you're cutting out just a bit. It
Okay,
might be okay.
you
Try
might
it one
want
more
to be
time.
back inside, maybe.
No, I think I was just hooked up to the Wi-Fi and I came out, so I unhooked from the Wi-Fi. My internet's good, but it was just
Okay.
I think the Wi-Fi. But just go for it one more time.
Okay. So, how old were you when you came out and started this transition journey?
I was a kid. I was super young. I came out as bisexual around fourth, fifth grade, and then I never really wore women's clothing or girls' clothing. And then when I was younger, I would have even adults tell me that, hey, if I was opening up the door, say per example, for somebody or like a couple, I would get told that I was, thank you, young man, thank you, sir. So I started piecing things together in my brain, and I didn't know what being trans was at the time, and it was kind of a little eye opener for me when people would call me a boy, and I was like, well, I'm not a boy. I was born a girl, and then I really started thinking more deeper into it, and I was like, is it possible to feel that way? Is it possible to feel that I do feel like more of a little boy than a little girl? And I started asking myself those personal questions, kind of personally, intimately, And I didn't really trust my grandmother or any of my family at the time to kind of have those conversations. I honestly really don't trust to have those conversations in, anyway now. I don't feel like that they are supportive, but do I feel like they have, do I, are people supportive? Yes. Now, do they have the capacity to understand the full mechanics of what it is to be trans? No. So for me to try to understand who I was very important. So that way I could be able to translate and tell them that. But how I ended up figuring it out was that my mom ended up kind of bringing me to this show that was produced by Katie Couric, and
Oh, yeah.
she did this segment on the trans kids and all that. And so I sat down one day and I watched it, and I settled with it. I didn't sit up, and was like, oh, this is who I am. This is, this is who I want to be, or, you know, and we were kind of sitting in the car, and she just kind of, asked me. She's like, Mac, do you feel like you're more of a boy sometimes? And I was like, I do. I was like, that's a weird question for me to ask. I'm 13, 14 years old. So I think I was in eighth grade at the time. So when I really came out was in middle school. I
Mhm.
started more dressing like a boy, started, got the haircut, the JB haircut. That's when uh freaking Justin Bieber was coming out. So the JB haircut was all the rave. And I actually hated it, but I didn't trust myself to get anything shorter. So I was like, this is the closest that I'm gonna get right now. And then when I started looking in the mirror, I things just started piecing together, and I just felt more happier the way that I dressed, the way that I presented myself, the way that I talked, and just that simple, that small amount of support just kind of made me kind of push over the hill a little bit to kind of to feel more affirmed in who I was and who I wanted to be in, and just me.
Yeah.
Um, and somebody asked me this question yesterday. It was one of my employees, and he was like, so when did when was the time? That's the question, right? When was the time? And I
Right.
think there is no exact time. I think it's more of like figuring out and understanding what it means to live in your truth and who you are.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's fair to say that, because you didn't know, because of the lack or the ignorance of education, is something that you should blame on yourself for not knowing anytime sooner. I
Well,
think that.
that's the thing. You need the vocabulary, right?
Mm,
Until your mom takes you to see that Katie Couric special, you didn't have, you had thoughts and you had feelings, but you didn't have the words to put to that.
yeah,
And
there was
that's,
no words, but there was actions, but that's what it really was.
yeah. And then you can begin to reconcile um, everything there. What was it like in middle school and then in high school in Texas? And I don't want to badmouth Texas at all, but you've got Governor Abbott passing all sorts of anti-trans legislation. What was it like in the school system coming out? What was it like trying to get gender affirming care?
At the time, and this was before everything was kind of shut down, and because I would say, if you asked me that question now, if I was in middle school or high school, I would say it would be very, very hard to get access to gender affirming care. Um, Impossible, absolutely not, but it would be very hard. Um, but ultimately, knowing who I am, and I wish a lot of other kids, I wish I could take the courage that I had when I was younger, because I was so resilient. I was such a hard head. I had so many anger issues. Like, if you told me no, I went the opposite direction. So, um, I would say
Such a boy.
that's such a man. Um, so like it's interesting because when people do ask me this, I'm just like, honestly, I if somebody told me no, or a school administrator or a principal or a police officer, like I would not care. Like I just would not. Like you would have to put me in jail and lock me up and throw away the key because I would fight tooth and nail for who I am. Like that's just that. Like I can't stress it enough to people that yes, like it is so scary right now being in the state of Texas and being trans, let alone anywhere in the United States or even outside anywhere anywhere in the world. Like it's so hard to be fully open and being trans. And finding those few places and those safe spaces that you can is an absolute blessing. Um, so and even now, like there's this trans woman that got murdered in just Denton, Texas. So that's not only I was in Denton last night. So if you think about it, it's like, you know, I kind of fear for my life sometimes, but
Sure.
ultimately I think with martial arts, and this is why I loved wrestling, and it brought me so many life skills that I wish I could pour into people. Um, it just taught me how to stand my ground. It taught me how to be affirmed and be true in who I was and who I hanged around and the causes that I fight for. Ultimately, like that's for me is the main goal was that I didn't care if I think that yeah, that's my mentality. I didn't care if I lived or died for who I was.
That, wow. Yeah, I hear you. Now you start wrestling with this stuff, you get, oops, pun intended. You get to high school and you encounter this amazing coach from the wrestling team. You like say you dabbled in other sports, but wrestling really comes to be your forte, your strong suit. Um, for those who haven't seen the documentary, what happens because you are trans and you are wrestling?
Oh, I mean, obviously there was so much backlash. And this is what people don't realize is like everyone wanted to say, "Oh, well, Mac wasn't good. He was never good to begin with." Even now today, I have coaches who saw me at the preseason national tournaments or the national tournaments up in North Dakota, and they would be like, "Oh, you were never good in the first place." I'm like, first of all, I even became an All American at preseason nationals. But most people didn't know that I was restricting my hormones. So that was the whole mix up. And I had to work with the media so hard in order to just try to not kind of tailor it to where it was more of a headliner that they could just write off for that week on, the next headline, which is my story was written for so long and for so many years. Um, and when it came to the state championship, there was something different about that third year because I showed up my freshman year, didn't podium. I made it a little further along, but didn't quite make the top six. And then my sophomore year got a little bit further, but not the same results that I really wanted, not top six. But then my junior year, and I think this is like any sport. You always have those seniors and juniors filtering out over the years. So mostly, especially me and the athletes, especially the women athletes who competed at the time during the state of Texas in the 110-pound and 119 division, was that those were the weight classes that you wanted to be in because that's how much competition there was. And so I knew that I needed to step it up, not only for myself, but in order to kind of be the best that I could be. Um, so when I got to the state championships, there was so many people that didn't agree with it because it's the state of Texas. You have the yeehaws and the yahoos. So it was
These are technical Texas terms that
probably not Yahoo, but that's something I just made up. But yeah, it was definitely a mixture of like cheers and mixed boos and people not agreeing with it, people agreeing with it, and that's the thing is like there's gonna be so many haters. Like I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, like yeah, it wasn't the celebratory kind of thing that you think an athlete would want after they win a big competition, right? And it's a pretty big, important competition. I mean, it's basically kind of it's you're fighting for the state title, and ultimately, like, these college scouts are coming and looking at, these athletes to see if they can go on to the next level. And to to see myself and look back on even some of the footage during the film and the documentary, it's interesting because I had so much heart. I had so much heart and resilience that it honestly brings me to tears because of how I didn't realize just what was going up on in the stands and all that. And even with my family there and my friends, like, they even told me afterwards that they would have people come up to them and try to say something, but my family wouldn't let them. And
Mm,
ultimately, they were so worried. UIL was so worried that somebody was going to actually do something.
yeah.
Um, so their main goal was to make sure that I was protected at all times, and that's pretty much kind of how it was.
That's the for me, and I've seen this. We're for the listeners, we're talking about the documentary "Changing the Game," which is currently available on Hulu. 2019, I want to say,
Yeah,
documentary.
2019 is yeah, 2019. It came out on Hulu. They got picked up by them. It was pretty amazing. Like, when Hulu did that, I think it truly brought something special to the conversation of not only what it means to be an athlete, but what it means to be a trans individual in a place where, whether it is red or whether it is blue, because it talks about Sarah Huckman, and
Yeah.
she ended up changing the law in um, New Hampshire. But we're looking now that I look back on it, they just now did a rollback on that law.
Yeah.
So it's just
The-
it's a scary place right now. It
but
really is.
the the scene, the first time I saw it, and every time since, that just brings me to a screeching halt is you in that arena at States, and it from the audio, all you can hear are the boos. And this I tried to, I'm ridiculously old, but I tried to put myself in the mindset of a 17-year-old standing there and this wave of hatred and disapproval just washing over. And how could that not be traumatic? You know? Um, you're
It
saying there were at least a mix of cheers and boos at the
Yeah,
time?
it was definitely mixed. I think what ended up happening, I think they tweaked it a little bit to where, like, they kind of amped up the booze a little bit more. I think I asked
Yeah.
about that because I was like, it didn't when I was there, like, in the middle of the mat, like, it didn't sound that bad.
Okay.
So
Well,
um
that's good.
so when I saw the audio, I was like, oh, well, dang.
Yeah.
People hate
Am
me.
I
But that's the thing, is like,
misremembering? Yes.
for me personally, like, but that's the thing. That's the difference between me and a lot of other people. And most people don't understand why I had this mindset. And I don't understand why either. Like, someone could literally spit in my face, spit on my shoes, um, tell me that they have the uttermost hatred of me, can hold a gun to my face, and I still would stand my ground. I still would look them in the eye, and I would still say, "I love you."
Mm,
I am. At the ultimate day, at the end of the day, sorry, my ADHD and my stuttering is definitely getting ahead of me. But I am definitely a lover over a fighter at the day, but you fight for what you love, right?
right.
And I knew that I had to become this person in order to kind of carry not only, I guess, let's say, the trauma that I've developed over the years, but also I could even feel the trauma. I could even feel the trauma from past lives. And I've gotten, like, almost kind of like more in a spiritual kind of note over the past couple of years. And I felt kind of like I had a due diligence, a calling to kind of look at these haters and kind of be like, meh, like,
Yeah.
that must, you must feel really big about yourself in order to come and travel all the way down to state tournament just to boo a kid
A
on a
high
mat.
school kid.
And
Yeah.
a high school kid, and let alone, nothing about my story, nothing about me. you are only seeing what the media wants you to see. And even like I would say that it was true to it, accurate to a perspective, but ultimately there were some things that I feel like elementally that were left out that could have ultimately aided the conversation, not only for people who didn't understand, but also people in our community that could have a better path in order to be not only the best person that they can be, but be the best athlete. When we talk about like trans athletes and specifically, um, but to have kind of this journey that it doesn't have to look so morbid. It doesn't have
Mm.
to look so tragic.
So if
Like
you had had access to that, if you had that sort of input to the documentary, what would you have added? What sorts of scenes?
I think definitely probably more scenes with well, this is what we were trying to do is I did wrestle a lot of the guys in practice, but at the time my school wouldn't allow them to come in to the room and film the practices that we had, which was really interesting to me
Interesting.
because
Yeah. Hmm.
because they could have ESPN come in for the football team, but they didn't want to allow someone who was doing an individual documentary or had the opportunity to have this type of aid and help. Um, because I would say, like, yes, Trinity football definitely put them on the map, but everyone has been saying that I have been putting Trinity High School on the map and is now on the map, especially with wrestling and Coach Clark, just in general, with putting our high school where they need to be, especially competition wise, which is was my ultimate main goal. Was I love sports so much that I love seeing the sport grow. I love seeing wrestling grow, and so seeing that I could bring that kind of traffic to my school in the best way possible for other athletes to succeed and be the best athlete that they could be, whether they're trans or not, was something that I truly feel no one has been able to do.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
they couldn't come into the practice room. That was the ultimate thing, which and it really sucked because there was so much footage that we could have used and it would have made the film so much better, but there was so many roadblocks that at that time we couldn't get past.
Mm. The At that time in 2018, 2019, as this is being made, it is, just to broaden the picture out a bit, it is pretty universally accepted at collegiate athletics and at the professional level that trans men competing in the men's categories is not a problem. Nobody, in terms of the sport organizations that set the rules, nobody has a problem with that. It's
Oh
with
yeah.
it's with us trans women where all the focus is. And so knowing that, it makes that documentary for me so much more poignant that it is such a deliberate political move to restrict where you can wrestle, because absolutely nobody anywhere supports keeping trans men out of men's categories. And it's that sort of thing that makes all of those people who were booing seem really disingenuous. It's like that you could have solved this problem, like that. Just
Mm.
let him wrestle with the guys.
Yeah, and I think I could have gone far in the men's division too, and I think with that, I think they knew, and this is me personally. Theoretically, I believe that at the time, if they did that, it then would have been used as an argument and a totem and like ultimately like at the top of the totem pole of basically, you know, kind of squashes the argument on their yes or yes I would say there are certain things about men and women that they do in order to perform. That is just that there is no point blank period like going around that. So even when I do have this conversation, especially when it comes to trans women, a lot of trans women athletes I know, like they say that they want to make sure that they're doing it fairly because ultimately, like it's not just to protect the people, but it's to protect yourself. Um, And I would say that as a trans athlete, like, it's going to be complicated no matter what. I wish it was sunshine and rainbows. I wish I could tell these kids that it's gonna be the most easiest path you're gonna have. You're gonna have, the same story you can tell along with your other friends who are cis and being an athlete. But the thing is like we're gonna have to jump through hurdles that no other person is gonna have to do. And it's gonna take somebody truly, truly, truly special in order to change people's motives, their lifestyles, the way that they think, and especially changing these rules that these organizations have. It's going to take truly somebody special, very, very special. I'm hoping that I'm that special person because I do truly want to go far. I want to go far in the sport. I want to prove that, especially as being born a woman, and competing against men, especially at the highest level, I think that would be very aidful in this conversation because then it's like, well, there's really no advantage. It just matters about how much hard work you put in. For me, well, that's what I think. I think one, it's resources. It's
Yeah.
being able to have access to resources. Two, it's being able to perform in a safe environment and to get the best training that you can, which goes along with resources. And three, um, oh, there was a third one. I just had it in my head. I just had it. Um, resources, support.
Yeah.
Resource. Honestly, those are the two biggest things, especially for any athlete, is resources and support. I mean, you even look, and this comes like into MMA, like very or with wrestling. I'll dabble in wrestling for a second. When I went to college, very few uh wrestlers in high school go off to actually compete in college and actually get the money to be able to perform the way that they need to. And you think about it, especially with wrestling, like there's no other outside organizations that you can make real money off of except for you have high school wrestling, you have college wrestling, and then you have the Olympics. That's pretty
Yeah.
much it. There's no in between on, unless you go overseas and you find like, an international team and you're kind of dabbling it here and there, but then you still need to be able to find a way to make a living and have fun. So that's when I think it starts to get complicated, especially for trans athletes, is that what happens after high school?
Yeah.
And that's ultimately it. And even then, like even before that, what happens during high school? Like, are you going to be supported? Are you going to be able to have the resources in order to get the best training that you can? But I think that ultimately, if you want to be the best athlete that you can be and you're not feeling sorry for yourself, and that's the one that I want to point out, is don't feel sorry for yourself because you don't have the resources, you don't have the support. Because if ultimately you want to go far, and this is outside of being trans in general, and this is where I think I've gotten more further in my mixed martial arts journey, is that I've started to not look at myself as a trans individual anymore, but just as a person,
Yeah.
and being able to connect with people not only in the mat room, but with people that have a lack of understanding of who I am. And I feel like once I kind of take that trans kind of pinpoint out of the conversation, it's almost like their whole world just is like it's coming in on them. And then like having these different conversations of what it means to actually be a man and a woman, and not really just talking about the implications of what it means to be trans or intersex, because most people never really had that conversation of what does it truly mean to be a man or a woman. There's really no definitive answer besides the fact of like biological factors, really physicality, but that's just that's more of like medical terms. But
Right. Right.
um outside of psychological, because I do have to acknowledge that I feel like at some sort of degree, like I've, even me as a trans person and going to psychology and dabbling kinesiology, like I've had to even acknowledge my own body parts, because like ultimately I feel like I'm proud of who I'm born to be, and I'm proud that I've been able to accomplish this much even as somebody who was born a woman, and being able to transit and being fortunate enough to be able to transition and do it safely. And um just like I'm blessed. Like I continue to be blessed every day. Now, do I have a lot of work to do? Absolutely. I think that this journey will continue and will forever be probably the biggest project. Myself will be the biggest project I ever work on in my entire life, and I want to be able to translate that to other people. That you will never stop working on yourself. You will never stop growing. But the moment that you do stop is when you're going to start feeling sorry for yourself. So get off your lazy ass and go do something with your life. Like, don't stop. Like, we gotta stop living in fear, because then that we're passing those generational traumas onto our kids, and it's gonna get worse and worse, and we gotta rise up. I'm referring to Hamilton right
Nobody ever
now.
wins a war by fighting defensively.
Hmm.
You can't win by just fighting defensively. You can stay alive, but if you want to win, and that's, I mean, what you were saying about how what sport needs is an exceptional trans person to help break through some of these conversation barriers. That's why I would love to see it be you, because all of the things that we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes,
Girl,
you
I've been
have,
trying.
you
I
have the
literally,
heart, you have the commitment. I mean, you look at something you want to do and you just commit fully.
yeah.
You are
It's
articulate.
it's been hard.
Yeah.
It's been hard, like having to pay for training and keeping up with bills and just real life stuff. Like, it gets kind of hard. Um, and I've been trying to find, organizations and sponsors to be able to try to kind of fund my journey or kind of get behind me in these tournaments and whatnot. And it's honestly been kind of a struggle. I've been trying to reach out to people, and it's kind of back and forth. So and ultimately at the end of the day, it's like taking a gamble, it's taking a chance, right? You're taking a huge gamble and chance on this one person who you think is probably going to go far. So my goal is ultimately to get as far as I can in some of the mixed martial arts art forms that I've been dabbling in, which is ultimately jujitsu. I want to get better in jujitsu. I want to either get to my purple or blue belt and be able to have NFC fights looking at me out in Georgia. So slowly these things are starting to come together over time, but I think for me personally, it's not happening fast enough. But maybe that's a good thing. Um, and you know hopefully one day in the next 5 years I'll be able to get on. If it does take 5 years, I ain't gonna be mad about my journey starting then and there, but I do want to make sure that I am doing it safely. I'm not doing it because I'm trying to survive. I don't want to be one of those guys that are in my car like, yes, if I didn't have my animals, I would definitely be sleeping in my car outside the mat room, like, but ultimately I got a family to take care of. Like, I have these other responsibilities, right? So um it's just been trying to find that even balance, and it's definitely been balancing out over the years. I am able to keep up with the black belts. I'm able to keep up with a lot of my training partners who are at an elite level. So I know that I can keep up with them in the mat room. It's now just being able to translate that onto the actual fight cards, and being able to do it at a successful level, and hopefully one day be able to do it to the point to where I can get enough money and be so successful at it that I could start putting it back towards these kids, because even in our own community that is not happening. So my main goal has been to try to be the best athlete I could be, and hopefully be the next Michael Phelps, Simone Biles, uh Johnny Bravo, if you will, to these kids, because right now we need somebody to get these kids to the doors, and nobody's doing that, only just for the sense that they are trans, not because that they're an athlete, but because they're trans.
Hmm. Let's hope that happens. They need it.
I've
Um,
been trying to talk with these profits and nonprofit organizations for years. Hopefully they'll listen to me one day, but right now I think that they think I'm tooting to my own horn right now. But I know the ultimate fight is, right now the ultimate fight is to get gender affirming care and to make sure people are living safely and truthfully in the spaces that we're living in. So am I mad about it? I'm not too mad about it, because ultimately at the end of the day, like, this journey is going to have to be for myself and a lot of other athletes. And I think I think especially the younger athletes are starting to realize that, especially the ones who are trans. Um, and that kind of breaks my heart a little bit, but we don't have a lot of funds in general. The economy sucks right now. So, like I said, it's going to take a special type of somebody to really break through those barriers and to kind of give ultimately a safe space to those kids that are coming up in the future generations.
Mm.
Like right now, I started up a nonprofit out in Georgia with me and a couple of my friends, with like different clothings that we're going to give out to the youth out in Georgia and Atlanta area. So we have over 5,000 articles of clothing, but hopefully I'm hoping we can get enough funds going and generating through that I can then start filtering that into these kids that are wanting to either need scholarships or they need to go to school or they want to go compete at the elite level, like so that they have that access to be able to do those things and so that they don't have to worry about, you know, what are they going to eat that day because they just paid rent, or you know, how are they going to get to practice, like what are their transportation needs. Those are the things that I think about, and most people I think kind of forget is that even being an athlete in general, it can get pretty expensive and it gets really tiring.
Yeah. Send me the link for that, and I'll make sure we get that into the show notes and
Absolutely.
get people some access to it. Let me take you back to the MMA for a second, and the fact that we live in a pretty shitty media culture right now, where people are rewarded for behaving terribly online. Last year, you stood up to a person like this, and I don't know anything about him other than what I read. It's this guy named
It's
Jake
still,
Shields.
oh, what a character, what a guy.
So
Yeah,
and so explain to folks what he posted, and you then stepped in to try to counter that narrative.
oh, I need to find my charger real quick because my phone
Yeah.
is at 3%. Mom, do you have keys real quick? He took it. It's been, love that. It's beautiful. Come on, boys. Oh yeah, Jake Shields was an absolute character. He's somebody that I would say just talks. Oh, I'm gonna wait to talk about that because I gotta find this charger because if I
Yeah,
don't,
no
my
worry.
phone's
We'll
gonna
edit
die.
it all out.
Yes, I know, girls. I know. They're they're like, Dad, 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 Dad. What are you doing, Dad? Oh my
You're
God,
not
I don't.
paying attention to me.
That's always, oh, it's a daily thing. I don't know if Carla. I don't know if I have an extra charger. I don't know, Mama. Oh, yep. A blessing. Blessed be the Lord today. I'm not even religious. Yeah, that's one other thing. This is just on the side talk is, you know, having to step up and kind of be there for my mom. She developed an autoimmune disease a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
So ultimately taking care of my family right now. My sister just had two kids. She's younger than me. She's 23. So she had Gabby around 2021. Um, so that's been my main goal is not only to show up as an athlete, but show up as an uncle and show up as a son, the best way possible that I can for my family. And that's why honestly I do this sport so hard because of that. Because I know I'm good. My mother, when she found out about the Jake Shields thing, she absolutely flipped her shit.
What?
Yeah, I said you flipped your shit when you found out about Jake Shields and everything, and you were like, "Oh my God, you're gonna get your ass kicked by him!" Like, you know, everyone was freaking out. I was like, y'all really don't trust my skill level. That's crazy.
It's not your skills. It's not your skills. He was wanting to kill someone.
That's the whole point. I wanted to kill him too. That's the whole point. How do you think Khabib and Conor McGregor thought about each other? They wanted to kill each other, right?
I'm about to leave, but
No. that's another thing is like my family doesn't get. I'm the only fighter and wrestler that is kind of uh dabbles in martial arts except for my uncle. My uncle right now is doing oh my god, what is he doing? I think he's doing some type of art voice. He's doing some type of mixed martial arts. Kudo, or it's something to do with like self-defense, but actually being able to harm somebody in the process. And I told him, I was like, I'm so glad you're getting into this because now I have like a family member that gets what I'm going through. Like I love it. Like continue. Um, but yeah, so this isn't like we're not doing like video. It's just
Nope,
gonna be the
nope.
audio, right?
I'm only going to use audio. Yep.
Okay, okay, cool.
I've been
Um,
told repeatedly that I have the perfect face for audio, so that's
get my share real quick. So yeah, Jake Shields, he's a very interesting character. Um, I remember when it came out, and at first I said I wasn't gonna say anything about it. I wasn't gonna say anything to him, but he's
tell
been kind of
tell
the
folks
first.
tell folks what he posted or what he said.
Yeah, I was just about
Oh,
to get into
sorry.
that. He posted this meme on Twitter, and then how I ended up finding out about it was because somebody ended up saying something to me. Because I mean, Jake Shields is a joke. He's a joke in the MMA scenario. Like, yeah, I would say he's ultimately really good in jujitsu. He's a black belt, so he has some type of knowledge about uh mixed martial arts. Absolutely, he's good at what he does, obviously because he performed at the elite level, so I can't deny that he is not good. But down the grapevine from people that I knew, he was kind of a dangerous man to play with, but I didn't care. So he posted this Twitter post about saying that I want the top 10 trans men MMA BJJ athletes, and I want to take them on like one by one. I was like, okay, first off, that seems very unrealistic, my guy. Like, you wanting to take on 10 trans guys at the same time just sounds absolutely ludicrous to me. And even if you did take on 10 trans men at the same caliber that you perform at the same time, you would get your ass kicked, my dude. Uh, so like, because like I think about it, and I talked to a few people, and I was like, if I trained hard enough for this, and I got the resources in order to actually compete against him, would I win? I don't think I think my odds are kind of out of this scenario with the inexperience I do have, but I give him a hell of a hard time, absolutely. But also there's a huge weight difference, so that's also even another factor. And that's what most people didn't realize was that even though we were talking shit to each other the whole time, I was like, oh well, I'll take you up on your offer. And then it blew up into this, oh, Jake Shields and Mack Beggs are gonna end up
Yeah.
fighting each other, and this and that. And like people didn't realize, like, dude, I'm 130 pounds and this man is probably close to 200 pounds by now, no weight cutting or nothing. And I'm like, y'all know nothing about like mixed martial arts or weight cutting or like, the fighting community in general and how the rules work. Like, we ain't fighting. Like, if anything, we just talking shit right now. Like, he's literally talking out of his ass. And I'm just responding back. And I think we ended up what happened because we started texting each other. He gave me his number and we started
Oh, wow.
talking because I was serious about it. But he wasn't. And that was the thing, was that he was like, oh, well, I don't want to. He was going to fly me out because I was on a flight from, I think, a conference in Texas. I think I was flying back from something I was doing here, and I was getting on the plane, and this is when everything happened. He hit me up, and we started talking via iMessage over on the plane, and he was like, "I will fly you out here right now. I will send you 10K if you come to the gym." And I really seriously considered it. I considered it a lot, but ultimately I was like, you know what? I was already hearing that people were showing up at his gym, and like people that were like news people, and it just seemed very unsafe at the time.
Mhm.
I think if I had the resources that he did, I think then it would have been a little bit more plausible. But I think it was just too unrealistic considering the lack of resources that I did have. And that's what honestly sucks for me, is that I didn't have the resources to be able to do it safely. And that was my main concern, was to make sure that I was safe. And I told him that. I was like, ultimately, dude, I want to say yes, but I trust you and I trust your judgment on, you're not going to do anything, and as well as your team, but I don't trust anybody outside your team. Like, I need to make sure, like, even if this does get set up in a way, I need to make sure it's done correctly. Um, he just never hit me up after that.
Mm.
And that was pretty much the end of that conversation with him. And he's just a joke. He's a straight up joke. He's a laughing stock. And anything that he has to say about anything is just absolutely ludicrous. But it was fun to dabble in the conversation, though.
Oh
Because
yeah.
I gotta get my foot in the door somehow.
Yeah.
Like, if it isn't gonna be these people who've been helping me over the years trying to get me through the doors, like, well, goddamn it, I'm gonna kick scream at anybody who has anything fucking to say.
Yeah. How do you draw the line, or the distinction in your own mind? Because with MMA or boxing or anything like that, there's a degree of trash talking
Mhm.
that is part of it. I mean, I grew up listening to Muhammad Ali, just tear apart his opponents before he even got in the ring, and it was wonderful. How do you draw a line between that kind of status quo shit talking that has to happen and anti-trans hate speech?
Like, with anti-trans speech being what? Hold on. What? Just speak regularly. No, I can go by and get the kids. I'm just doing this real quick. I
We're gonna
totally
be
forgot
done in
about.
a second. Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna be done. So my mom doesn't. She hasn't seen me done a lot of these things, so
Oh,
she
hi
is
mom. It's Claire.
Go leave. Do your mom. Go do your shit. Go do your shit. Go do your thing. I'll go pick up the kids. Love you. Me and my family dynamic is a whole nother conversation, but I'll say that for another day.
Yeah.
Um, but oh my god, where was I? The anti-trans speech hate talk, is that like
Yeah.
from other people?
Well, that's when somebody like Jake
And
Shields
somebody like Jake Shields.
lets that out there. How do you weigh that and say, okay, nah, he's just trash talking and I can work with that? And
Yeah, so like
somebody
that's what I
comes,
pretty much did. Like, I think that's what he realized, was that I wasn't gonna actually, like, anytime soon, like, feed into his game. And I think that he knew I was just using him as like a pawn to trash talk and just kind of help me with my story and help me aid and get, have more of a voice. And I think what ended up happening was, I think probably one of his producers or one of his teammates ended up telling him, dude, stop talking to him. Like, you're not helping yourself. Like, just stop talking. And I was like, I bet that's exactly what happened, because I was like, dude, you were playing in my field, bro. Because he ultimately was like telling me that he was sorry for what he was saying. Like,
wow.
I still have his messages and everything, and one day I might get bold enough to leak it. One day I might get bold enough to leak it if we ended up doing. Well, he might be too old for me to even compete against him at that time, but when I actually get into it, maybe not. But you know he ultimately was like, I am sorry, like, I didn't mean for it to kind of get like this. And I was like, dude, the way that you talk, like, ultimately I get it, like, your main conversation probably isn't towards trans guys, it's towards trans women, right? And he was like, yeah, I just don't think, like, they're men. I'm like, see, that's your problem, bro. I'm like, you're seeing so many things at a very linear level. Like, your perspective is very, very trash. It's giving not demure, if you will.
Yeah.
I had to throw that in there. It's been going around so much. uh, but I think that it's just a lack of ignorance on his part, and from the conversations I've had with people and learning about who he was as an athlete, down the grapevine, which I guess this person that I know, that I've been, in the works with for a while and doing projects with, and very trustworthy friend. I guess he trained up in New York at the Renzo Gracie Academy. and they knew about him and how he trained and who he was as a person, and they were like, I ultimately don't think you should get involved with him. Like, everyone was telling me to not actually do this with him. And I was like, I need y'all to understand one thing. First one is there's a huge weight difference. Secondly, of course this dude is talking trash and he's super ignorant. Of course. Like, there's no doubt about that. And three, how do you think I'm going to get any bigger with some type of, presence and trying to either get sponsors or try to have people take me seriously and to becoming the best athlete and elite athlete that I could be, not only at the at these local fighting organization levels, but ultimately I want to get to the UFC. So what do you think I'm going to have to do in order to make people look at me and look at me in a different limelight? I'm gonna trash talk this dude. I'm gonna trash talk him so good to where he's not gonna be able to say he's not gonna be able to say another damn thing about a trans athlete again because he doesn't know jack shit. And no one is going to take anything that I say out of a sense of relevancy because he didn't follow up.
Which is the way you fight that kind of ignorance. That's that's perfect.
I played him like a fiddle. It was amazing. I was so proud of myself.
Mac, we got to wrap this up. Parting words. Tell folks something they need to know.
Stay strong, stay true, be resilient in anything that you do.
I love it. Hang on a second. I'm going to stop the recording. Let's do that. Oh, I see. There we go.